Welcome to Thoughts on Ministry podcast with Ray Eppard, a podcast focused on helping you be more effective as you serve God. Now, here's your host, Ray Eppard.
Hello, glad you could join us again today. We're talking about my thoughts on ministry, and we've been looking at the different positions of leadership. 5 different positions. Much of this comes from John Maxwell. I've tweaked it a little bit, where you start off positional, then second level is relational, third is productional, 4 is developmental, and 5 is institutional. Now, with this, we've went over a little bit about what each one of those are, and we'll incorporate a little bit more into that over the next few things that we talk about. But today I want to talk about knowing and functioning where you are. And with this, we'll use some illustrations of these different things. Very often, what people really want to do is function like they're institutional when they're actually somewhere else along the line. And you actually have to, you've got to pay your dues to get to that institutional leadership. One of the biggest contrasts, I would say, is between institutional and positional. You know, a pastor, there are some organizations that move their pastors every couple years, and even those that don't. If a pastor transitions and he's into a new position, then he is functioning, whether he wants to or not, from a positional relationship as far as the people are concerned. The people recognize, okay, he's the pastor, he's here, and he hasn't had a chance to develop relations with them. He hasn't had a chance to have results to produce, and then he's also not had the chance to develop anybody, and he's not been there long enough to be institutional. And so the only thing he is a positional from the people's standpoint. He may have the plans and the desires and the vision from God to do these other things that will produce results, that will develop people and have those relationships, but he's really going to start out in that positional spot by default. And what can create problems is when a person is in that positional place and they try to function somewhere else. They try to function as that developmental person who has brought people along, that they try to function in that institutional role of that all of these things combine into it over a course of time, and it builds a level of trust that wouldn't be there otherwise. Here they are in positional and trying to act like they've created the results and all of these things, and then the people pull back from that. And one of the things that really creates a lot of problems in ministry is people trying to not function where they are. You got to know where you are, and you got to function where you are. Now, that doesn't mean you have to stay there. The vision and desire should always to be moving from that. The thing that we should always be is really that 4th spot, which is developmental. We should be constantly developing and putting into people. But you don't start off there. You actually have to win their trust over to be able to begin to develop, to be able to begin to put into them. It starts off with that positional, and you end up having to win them over. You know, like here at our church, you know, I am the pastor, but I'm not the pastor of everyone in the church. To some people in the church, I'm just the preacher. I'm really not their pastor. They do not relate to me as a pastor. They relate to me as the preacher, the guy who preaches at Victory Worship Center. And the thing of it is when I deal with people, I have to recognize with this person, I have a position. I'm in a positional stance with them. And not because that's what I want, not because I haven't developed other positions with other people, but that's where I am with this person. And so how I have to handle this situation is from a positional relationship, from a positional stance. And if I try to function somewhere else, then that interaction probably will not go well. We've got to know and function where we are, not just in a broad sense of the term, but in each relationship that we have. We need to know it and function there. Well, glad you could join us today. Hope you can be with us again.
You've been listening to Thoughts on Ministry with Ray Eppard. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.